Dude, what's up? Southeast Michigan podcast. We are just under 10 weeks. I think we're 9 weeks out from the college football season, the Michigan season to be exact. And we are on the road there doing a team by team breakdown. And if you haven't heard, go back to episode 53 and check out Purdue and UCLA. And coming up on this episode, we are chit chatting about Nebraska and USC. We got another Big Ten newcomer here coming in, and we are going to take a look at the Trojans. Southeast Michigan podcast, of course, free and available wherever you watch or listen. We are up on YouTube, so if you like to watch us or watch me there, go ahead and subscribe, click the bell. Now, last week's episode, I had mentioned that a quick thing about the RSS feed or whatever, how there's a tab for the podcast and the videos on YouTube. Well, the podcast portion, for some reason, when it automatically uploads, it doesn't do the video. So I have to upload it separately like I have been. So last week's episode, you won't have any visuals if you watch on YouTube. Spotify and all that stuff will have the visuals. So if you're watching on YouTube specifically, just episode 53 is just going to be audio only. So I apologize for that. So now going forward, just going to be uploading it separately like I have been. It's not as convenient, but it's the reason why it's on YouTube to begin with. Yeah. So we'll start with the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and then segment 2, if you want to call it, we'll get the USC Trojans in. So we won't be doing any headlines and stuff on this episode. This is strictly just our preview, so let's get into it. Let's get into the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Now, where are we at? Alrighty, Nebraska Cornhuskers 2023 went 5-7, 3-6 in the conference. Matt Rule's second season now at Temple. When he coached there, he jumped from 2 to 6 wins in year 2. And at Baylor, he jumped from 1 to 7. So more of a drastic difference there for the Baylor Bears. A lot of optimism for 2024 with a favorable schedule. Freshman Dylan Raiola hype. Donovan Raiola, Dylan's uncle, is going into his 3rd season as the offensive line coach. He spent time with the Chicago Bears before. And to be quite honest, I knew Dylan's dad, Dominic, played for the Nebraska Cornhuskers back in his day and was a long-time Detroit Lion. I did not know that his uncle was the offensive line coach, so learned that. The Huskers bring back Heinrich Harburg, who was 5-3 under center, and now he's going to be competing for the starting job with obviously the incoming freshman. Defensive coordinator Tony White was rumored for the UCLA head coaching job, but stayed in Lincoln. With the goal to be the number 1 defense in the country, the Huskers were 11th in total defense last season. 3 of the 4 team leading tackles return, and a lot of strength is going to be coming from the linebacker room along with the safety room. Last bowl game appearance for the Huskers was the 2016 Music City Bowl, so they are looking to get bowl eligible and get back into postseason play. Key losses for the Huskers. Quarterback Jeff Sims leaves for Arizona State. Quarterback Chuba Purdy, yes, Brock Purdy's brother, left for Nevada. Linebacker Chief Borders dipped for Pittsburgh. And defensive line Ruquan Buckley left for Michigan State. Key additions. Quarterback Jalen Gramstad transfers from Northwestern College as a grad transfer. Gramstad passed for over 3,500 yards and 35 touchdowns, while he can also run, putting up just under 800 on the ground with an 8-pack of touchdowns. So we got a mobile quarterback again for the Huskers, and hopefully if he does get the starting nod for them, for their sake, that he doesn't turn the ball over. A lot of the errors, blunders, turnovers came from the quarterback position. last season. And if you remember watching Nebraska travel Boulder, Jeff Sims is either running for a touchdown, um, 20 yards, or he's putting the ball on the carpet. You know what I mean? So that's something that they're going to look to shore up. Former four-star running back Dante Dowdle comes in from Oregon, was a freshman last season, so a lot to prove, not a lot of numbers to look at. Wide receiver Isaiah Nair, transferring from Texas, tore his ACL last season for the Longhorns, but previously played at Wyoming, where he put up 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns. Wide receiver Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, he compiled 1,400 yards and 13 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. Defensive back Syer Wright from USC comes in. Linebacker Stephon Thompson from Syracuse. In 4 seasons, he notched 10.5 sacks, 172 tackles, with his junior season being cut short due to him tearing his ACL at the season opener of 2022. Now, getting into the 2024 schedule. Let's flip you around on the screen. So now you're looking at what I'm looking at their schedule. 7.5 wins via FanDuel is the over-under for Matt Rule's Nebraska Cornhuskers. Week 1, they are hosting UTEP. W. Week 2, they're hosting the Colorado Buffaloes. Obviously, we just talked about them at Boulder last season. Now, I'm giving the W here. I know there's a lot of hype again with Colorado. Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Shiloh Sanders. Last year, Colorado's biggest problem was depth on the offensive line, especially. But traveling to Lincoln Memorial Stadium, I believe that this is going to be. I was about to say disaster, but it's not going to be disaster. I think it's going to be an exciting game, but being at night, I just think the atmosphere is going to be a little too much to play on the favor of Nebraska side. Give me the Nebraska Cornhuskers here. Give me the dub. Then they host Northern Iowa afterwards. That's going to be a W. They then host Illinois. So we have the first 1, 2, 3, 4 games at home. Illinois is going to be no match for Nebraska. Give them the dub there. Then Nebraska travels to Purdue. I believe this is going to be a defensive battle. I'm not super confident in this pick, but I'm siding with Ryan Walters defending his home turf versus most likely the freshman Dylan Raiola. Okay? You listen to Joel Klatt. I know he's really bullish on Nebraska, saying that if this team potentially could be 7-0 going into Columbus, that there's going to be, a lot of hype, even more hype, and a lot of intrigue. But I think Nebraska drops the soap here in West Lafayette. Okay, I could be completely wrong. Like I said, I'm not super confident in the pick, but road game, starting a freshman quarterback potentially. I'm not saying Purdue are world beaters, but I have like this secret love right below the surface for Ryan Walters, and just from what I've seen him do personally. Again, if you listen to last week's episode, I know I had mentioned that Purdue was like 30 points given up on defense, every week, but there's just something where they just need to string everything together and play a complete game because, like I said, they have not to say stars, but they have good pieces sprinkled throughout both sides of the ball, but mostly on defense. Home defense, getting the dub over Nebraska. So Nebraska's taking an L here. Moving on to this next part of their schedule, they're back home for Rutgers. Now, Rutgers did fairly well last season on defense, and they lost a few key pieces. They bring in Minnesota quarterback Ethan Kaliakmanis, who threw 14 touchdowns and 9 picks in 2023. Their identity is still going to be the run game. I think I read somewhere where they ran the ball like 61% of the time. So if Nebraska can slow down Kyle Monaghan, the running back, this game they can win and win ugly. So Rutgers, gave up roughly 30 points on average to the Big Three last year, which is Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. And so Purdue probably be a little bit less than that, but home field advantage I think plays again in a role here, and I think they take down the Scarlet Knights. This one is going to be on. I mean, if you're looking at the screen, it says 11 a.m., 2:30 p.m., 3 p.m. So I don't even know what the hell that means. Who knows? It's probably going to be at 3 p.m. Is that Eastern time? Doesn't say. Interesting. The next, they have a 2-game road stretch here where they go to Bloomington to face Indiana, and then they go on the road at Columbus to play Ohio State. So they're taking a W from Indiana there at Bloomington, and then when they go to Columbus, of course, you're not going to win. Huskers played Ohio State 10 times and won once, and that was back in 2011. They're on a 7-game losing streak, and that's going to become 8. Ohio State is going to be tough, and of course, we haven't done Ohio State's preview yet, but when we do, we'll just see how good they are, and they are good enough to beat Nebraska. Next is a home game for UCLA. Now, Nebraska gets the Bruins at home right in the middle of UCLA's back and forth road trip. So this is going to be kind of a theme that I've been I have talked about and I'm going to continue to talk about doing these season's previews. UCLA hosts Oregon before traveling to Penn State to come home for Minnesota and then go back on the East Coast for Rutgers before this one. So because of UCLA's travel, I think that is going to play in the hands of the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So W versus UCLA. Now, again, when we get into USC later in this episode, you'll hear me bring this road trip sesh up again. And like I mentioned in last week's episode, you see it in the NFL all the time. West Coast teams have a harder time traveling to the East than East does the West. And can you imagine if the NFL stupidly adds a London team or a Germany team, and then you have, for example, the Los Angeles Chargers or Rams or anyone from California or the West Coast that has to fly across the United States, then across the pond to play over in Europe, then to come all the way back home. The logistics and the travel alone are just so ridiculously absurd. I can't even believe that the idea is being thrown around out there. So obviously that's more of a leap than this, but I still think that the travel time is going to take effect. And well, I mean, I could be completely whiffing on this, could be completely wrong, but it's something to seriously look out for. Next, the Nebraska Cornhuskers go on the road and take on the USC Trojans. So obviously, again, we'll be hitting up the USC Trojans later in this episode in segment 2. So I'll tell you right now that the Nebraska Cornhuskers are losing in Los Angeles. The Trojans could maybe see a night and day difference on defense with D'Anton Lynn coming over to be the defensive coordinator. Both these teams have quarterbacks with a lot to prove, but I'm going with USC and Miller Moss, who threw 6 touchdown passes in the Holiday Bowl last season, assuming he gets that over Jaden Maeva. Jaden Maeva is a quarterback that's coming in via UNLV transfer portal, and of course we'll touch on that more in depth and whatnot soon. But give Nebraska the L here. Excuse me. Now, they close out the season with a home game versus Wisconsin, and then they go at Kinnick and Iowa City for a night game. Oh boy. So the Badgers, they're still trying to figure out their air raid system. They bring in Tyler Van Dyke from Miami and have a junior quarterback, Braden Locke, to compete for the starting role. Van Dyke has problems with not taking care of the ball, thrown to other team at times. Threw 12 picks last season, and I think Tony White gets his guys in position to hold it down here. So Wisconsin traveling to the West Coast, or not West Coast, but a little bit more to the Midwest. And I think the Badgers lose here. Give me Nebraska and the W. Now, we then travel to Kinnick, like I said, and this is a 6:30 p.m. time, so nighttime for the blackout most likely. So give me the night game. I can't say no more. Right? Iowa has won 8 of the last 10 in this matchup series. Nebraska did win last time it traveled to Iowa City. However, I think Cade McNamara is pretty big upgrade over Alex Padilla, who played in that 2022 matchup, and it wasn't a night game. I believe it was a 12 p.m. kickoff, maybe 3. And so hostile environment, of course, it's going to favor the Hawkeyes. Now, I know Cade McNamara has a lot that he has to prove for himself. Of course, got hurt last year early in the season, and so I was, hope for a revamped retooling of him and Eric Hall from Michigan coming in, blah, blah, blah. It just did not pan out that way. So it remains to be seen. But we know that some hostile environments can be even being more of a key factor. Like we talk about Penn State, Happy Valley, we talk about Kinnick in the Big Ten. So give me the Hawkeyes. I have the final prediction here for the Nebraska Cornhuskers at 8-4 and 5-4 in conference play. So they hit their over on their win totals, which again was, what was it? 7.5. I got them at 8. And for what it's worth, the over/under I set for FanDuel was 5.5 for UCLA. I got them at 4-8, so slightly under. And then Purdue, their over/under total was 4.5. I have them at 5. So far I have 2 overs, 1 under. When we come back, we'll be talking about the USC Trojans. Don't go nowhere. Sports betting has rapidly risen in popularity, and I want to connect you all with an opportunity to get started or get ahead. Having multiple sportsbook accounts is the most simple way to maximize your profits, and there has never been a better time to sign up. When you visit my page, signupexpert.com/southeast, you'll be connected to all the sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. All of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users, and when you register through my link, you automatically receive the top offer at each one. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful sports betting. If you want to take advantage of these benefits and support our brand, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook at signupexpert.com/southeast. All right, we're back for USC, ladies and gents. We are back for USC. The Trojans. Let me see where we're at here. Let me get my dumb face off the screen and get the browser back up and running. Atta boy. All right. Let's see here. The USC Trojans 2023. Actually, I take that back. We don't need to do this schedule yet. What am I doing? I'm jumping the gun. We ain't doing the schedule yet. What are you doing, Dan? All right. Here we go. USC Trojans 2023, 8-5, 5-4 in the conference, the Pac-12 that is. Lincoln Riley enters his 3rd year in Southern Cal under a lot of pressure, right? Looking to reclaim some of that hype he had a few years ago. Lincoln Riley has coached 3 Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. Think of that. 3 Heisman Trophy quarterbacks. All 3 went number 1 overall in the draft. You got Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and now Caleb Williams. Like that, to me, if that's a recruiting, like if you're trying to get the best quarterback out of the recruiting class, I mean, not much more you could say after that, right? The other question here is, can Miller Moss or Jaden Mavia be the next? Defense over the past 2 seasons have finished beyond 90th in scoring defense. D'Anton Lynn looks to revamp that by coming in from the Bruins. And according to On3 at USC, had 30 players transfer out. So a lot of I was going to repeat myself talking about like a lot of pressure, but there is. I mean, the seat's hot. Lincoln Riley has to perform, or I mean, where do you go after this if you're, with that program? What do you do? So D'Anton Lynn, he's gonna have a lot of pressure on him too to like, I don't know, not have a terrible defense on the other side of a Lincoln Riley offense. Like again, Caleb Williams has to throw 6 touchdown passes to win by field goal. It's ridiculous. It's not feasible. So that has to be fixed. So let's get into the key losses, right? So Caleb Williams, of course, right, first overall to the Chicago Bears. Safety Kalen Bullock goes third round to the Houston Texans. Running back Marshawn Lloyd, third round of the Green Bay Packers, and that's a running back to where if you're listening to fantasy football advice right now, or you're listening to the podcast for the upcoming season, like Marshawn Lloyd is a sneaky dark horse to be someone where they can be in line for some solid playing time. Former five-star quarterback Malachi Nelson left. Shockingly, he's going to Boise State. Former five-star defensive back Damani Jackson is transferring to Alabama. Now, it was someone that Michigan recruited, and at one point there was a rumor that he was going to come to Ann Arbor to play across Will Johnson. And then right before the Rose Bowl, Jackson was seen walking around with Nick Saban during their bowl game prep for said Rose Bowl. So, kind of a bummer because him and Will are close. They talk. So that was obviously a Michigan fan's wet dream that didn't come true. So good luck to him over there with Kalen DeBoer. Wide receiver slash Raleek Brown transfers to Arizona State. The new Big Ten going coast to coast will have its challenges, and as I alluded to that earlier, USC, will experience the full weight of it. As we will see from the Michigan game week to the Rutgers, the amount of travel time. So let's get into it. The key additions, rather. Kyle Ford, wide receiver from UCLA. Running back Jaquavius Marks, a.k.a. Woody Marks, transferring in from Mississippi State. In 4 years, Marks tallied 1,883 yards and 22 touchdowns. Only played in 9 games last year and still carried it for a career high 121 times. Another one that we kind of alluded to earlier, Jaden Mavia from UNLV. Could have gone to Georgia from what I read, but moved to LA instead. And he threw, I think, about 20 touchdowns and just over 3,000 yards as a running rebel. And when he played in Michigan, it wasn't pretty. I mean, he went like 5 of 7 for 21 yards. And if I remember correctly, I think he got knocked out of the game. I mentioned him like 15 times by now, but like defensive coordinator D'Anton Lynn comes in from UCLA. Bruins went from the 92nd scoring defense in 2022 to the 14th in 2023 regarding that stat line. So D'Anton Lynn was the coordinator in 2022. So in one season, he made that drastic imprint there. So I can see why USC is trying to make that move, and guess we'll have to keep an eye on it, right? Defensive back Greedy Vance transfers from Florida State and Louisville prior. So that's someone who's going to be put into a big role. All right, now let's get into their schedule here, and then this is where we make the screen adjustments. So, USC Trojans. They take on, actually before that, excuse me, their over-under, by the way, is 7.5 via FanDuel. So let's see if we get to that. They take on LSU at Allegiant Stadium on September 1st. This is actually going to be a Sunday game, 4:30 p.m. And again, I think that is the West Coast time since we're on the USC page. So probably 12 or 1 o'clock start for Eastern time people. First time these teams have played one another since 1984, believe it or not. Both teams have quarterbacks who show potential ceilings in a very, very, very small sample size. So this game could honestly go either way. And, we're talking about it right now here in June. I'm slightly leaning towards LSU on this one, but like by 3 points. So as much as it pains me to say Brian Kelly wins a game, he wins this one, I think. And neutral site, it'll be fun to watch. Next is Utah State. They're going to be 1-1 here. They are going to be on the Big Ten Network playing Utah State. This is a night game. And, yeah. So Los Angeles is going to see its first W there. And we're at 1-1. Now we travel to Ann Arbor. they're playing Michigan. All-time series, I believe USC is 6-4 against Michigan, and the last time they played was the '07 Rose Bowl game where it was close at halftime, and then second half came out, and the Trojans dog walked Michigan off the field. This is going to be Michigan's first ever stripe out, and Michigan will be coming off a win over Arkansas State in either a rebound game after the Texas loss, or if they're going to remain undefeated for this Trojan matchup. Michigan wins this game because of location and solid defensive post, and then U of M, being, U of M close and essentially a must-win for Lincoln Riley. Like if Michigan wins this game and USC is sitting at 1-2, there's going to be problems. But I think it's very possible. Next, USC is hosting Wisconsin. Now, that is going to be a W. It's essentially air raid versus air raid, but so far USC works and Wisconsin's doesn't. Wisconsin, of course, we'll get to that preview when we do. I believe that's going to be next week. I'm not sure how I have that on my schedule, but we'll see. Either way, Tanner Mordecai came in from Southern Methodist to try to spark the Badgers' new generation of offense. Didn't work out, so we'll see. But I'm taking the Southern Cal Trojans here. Then they go on the road to Minnesota. Now I think they get the dub in Mini, but this is part of that schedule again where the Trojans will be jumping from time zone to time zone, like UCLA will be dealing with also. And so again, I'm riding big on this take, and I might die with it, get flushed on the toilet, but that's a hill I'm willing to die on. So they despite the time jumps, will get this first one here in Minnesota. Then they go to California. They come back home to host the Nittany Lions. Now, this one, I believe Penn State. I believe Penn State is going to be good enough to hold its own here on the West Coast. I'm not sure if I believe fully in their quarterback. His name is escaping me right now, but it doesn't matter. They lose a lot. They have a new defensive coordinator coming in, but as a more of a complete team and continuity, right? Got James Franklin. He's still there. Their quarterback going into year 3. They got their dual running backs coming back. They still have a good defense. The Lions here. They USC goes on the road for Maryland. So again, we hosted Utah State, traveled to Ann Arbor, came back to home for Wisconsin, traveled to Minneapolis, came home for Penn State. Now we're going back to Maryland, and I think USC can still eke this one out. Okay. Then they go back home for Rutgers. Now I'm still giving him dubs here, but it's not going to be easy. So far, that one the L there in Happy Valley. To go back to back home for Rutgers. Now if by this time USC doesn't have a competent offense, this game could look rough. Okay, Rutgers is that make you look ugly, and even though this is in LA, I think the Scarlet Knights could potentially hang around longer than they want them to. So they're gonna make you look ugly, and either you lose or you still somehow win doing it. Let's see here. Where are you at? Can you still see on the screen? Okay. Now we have the backstretch here. We have the final 4 games. Okay. So win at Maryland, win at home versus Rutgers. Now you're going back to the West Coast. You're going to face Washington. Another team that we haven't gotten to talk about yet at this point in the breakdowns, but this squad is retooling a whole heck of a lot. Okay, Washington has to replace NFL wide receivers, Dylan Johnson, their star running back, and all 5 starting offensive linemen, and of course Penix Jr. So both USC and Washington lost a lot. USC's lost less. Give me the Trojans. Then they come home for Nebraska. Because I gave you a detailed take on this already in the earlier in the episode with the Nebraska portion. I'll just say USC wins close here at home. UCLA on the road, technically. I mean, it's just a stone throw away, right? Might as well just call this a question mark bowl. In the UCLA preview, I mentioned this series matchup has been a barn burner for a while now. This time around in 2024, I believe this will be a much lower of a scoring game, and USC nudges it out. So plugging in two new quarterbacks or two younger quarterbacks and defenses that have a lot to improve, but USC nudges it out, like I said. Now, finally, the grand poobah or hoo-yah, whatever you want to say it, the finale, Notre Dame in Southern Cal. The Irish should be one of the better teams in the country this season. Should be quite stout on defense. And if Duke quarterback transfer Riley Leonard can stay healthy, this team could be very dangerous. The Irish win this one. Notre Dame has won 7 of the last 10 meetings here. Now, in the matchup in general, not in California, but I think Notre Dame is one of those teams where they like right when you get to believe in them, they drop, and this goes all the way back to Brian Kelly. However, I still think that if Riley Leonard can figure that out, that team is going to be deep in the playoff. In my opinion. Again, their defense is always going to be good. It's just it comes down to be consistent and how that offense looks. So at the end of the day, here the USC Trojans, according to me, my opinion, I think they go 8-4 and 7-2 in the Big Ten. Now they have somewhat of a decent schedule in the conference wise. Obviously, LSU isn't that LSU team is obviously not the same, right? It doesn't have Jay Daniels on it. It's a neutral site field, but like Michigan and Penn State is really all they have to worry about until they get to Notre Dame. But 8-4, 7-2, that's where I have the USC Trojans. Let's see here. So that's it. You got your 2 on deck teams right there done. Now, when we come back for next week's episode, I believe we have. Let me look at this real quick. Sorry, I kind of losing my train of thought here for a second here, the last few minutes, because my kids are not listening to their mother right now, so I'm hearing what's going on, and I'm doing this. The next week's episode is actually not going to be in Wisconsin. It's going to be Illinois and Minnesota. So Golden Gophers and Fighting Illini. The Fighting Illini one's going to be kind of fun because I am going to be at the game where Michigan will be playing in Champaign. So, anyways, thank you for watching or listening. Again, Southeast Michigan Podcast is free and available wherever you get it. And as I mentioned in the last episode, I'll be running a giveaway here soon. So stay tuned for those details. I'm going to be giving away 2 autographed items. There's just going to be a slight participation problem on your guys' end. And we'll declare a winner here soon. I don't know what exactly it's going to entail or when, but I know I'm just kind of waiting for those 2 items to appear in my mailbox, and then we'll go from there. So if you want to win something cool, stick around. The description box will have the Twitter/X handle, or you can find us on the Facebook page. And of course, if you want, Southeast Michigan Podcast on YouTube. And if you are so kind, 5-star review wherever you listen or watch as well. All right, guys, go blue. See you in the next one.